Good morning. I love it. You're more energetic than I am today. That's new. I like it. Keep on. Keep on doing that. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Bangor. I'm Reverend Drew Moeller. I use he, him pronouns. I want to welcome all of you who are gathered here in our wonderful sanctuary and those who are joining us today on Zoom. It is great to have you here with us. For those of you who are visiting us today, we have a couple things that are going to be happening a little bit different, and we'll have some instructions right after the announcements about a fire drill that we'll be doing. So hold tight for that. We invite people who are visiting today to join us for our coffee and refreshments. Usually we have them upstairs in the Dorothy Memorial, but today they're going to be downstairs where the yard sale stuff is, and it'll be easier access for people after the fire drill. Today, I want to introduce Zach Campbell. Zach, where are you? Who is going to be talking with me and sharing the sermon portion of the service. And we're very glad to have Zach visiting from Needle Point Sanctuary. And he is also a social studies teacher in high school and an organizer and activist here in the Bangor area. So let's give a round of welcome. And finally, for those of you who are joining us today for the first time, right after the announcements, before we do the fire drill briefing, if you want to introduce yourself, we'll provide an opportunity for you to do that. It doesn't have to be a long thing, just a quick say your name and let us know that you're visiting us. Not a requirement, but we always like to welcome newcomers at the beginning of service. So with that, I'm going to invite Carrie to come up and offer our morning announcements.
Okay, morning, y'all. As Reverend Drew said, the coffee hour is going to be downstairs. We also have today, after the fire drill, the chat with the minister at 11:30. You'll be able to speak with Reverend Drew, just an informal way to make your voice heard. We also, at the same time, are going to have our the Justice Now meeting in the community cafe downstairs. Learn a little bit more about participating in the Solidarity Harvest, especially with the UU group. Let me see. Also coming up next week, we have two things of note. We have the Halloween Hullabaloo, and that'll be at October 27th at 10. And costume parade, come in with costume if you want. Cakewalk, selfie station, a lot more. You'll see there's a bigger one of these out at the front. Feel free to grab one of those. Also, next week is the Bean Supper. Information on that is in your flyer. Please, at some point in time very soon, on the piano in the Dorothy is the directory. Now's the good time to update any changes about your address, phone number, or to, if you're relatively new, go ahead and join the directory. And so with that, Sue?
I'm going to be really short because I don't have the little thing for me. Following the fire drill, the coffee hour is going to be down in the vestry, and we have the yard sale remainders left over. There's tons of good stuff. Please go down there. It's by donation. We really want it all gone. Thank you.
So now, is there anybody who is visiting us today for the first time, or maybe it's been a little while and you want to introduce yourself? Just raise your hand and we'll bring a microphone to you so you can introduce yourself. You know, there's always one of those shysters in the mix. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Anyone? Okay. Zach, why don't you come up here and let us know what's happening with this fire drill thing anyhow?
Sure. Good morning. As mentioned this morning, towards the end of the service, we will be conducting a fire drill to ensure that we're all familiar with our evacuation procedures. So while the adults practice the fire drill in the sanctuary, the children in SE will be following their own procedures and their separate evacuation procedures with their teachers down in SE. When the alarm sounds, Please make your way out of the building calmly. We all remember this sort of the fire drill practices. For those who are comfortable navigating stairs, please exit out of the back of the sanctuary, out of these doors back here. The stairs lead down to the narthex, and you can exit out of the main narthex doors or out of the side door, at the lower side door of the building, which has a ramp and railing. If you prefer to avoid stairs or need a little extra time, please exit back through the Dorothy doors where you came in. Please don't use the elevator. Note that our alarm system is loud and has flashing strobe lights, if that's something you want to be aware of. We hope to learn from this drill, so if you have suggestions or ideas about how to make it smoother or work better, please definitely let me know after the drill. After the drill, parents can reunite with their children in the classrooms as normal, as I understand. And then after the drill, as mentioned, please join fellowship down in the vestry. Thank you for your cooperation, and best of luck. No. But that may be something to add to the list. Thank you.
Zach, am I correct in thinking when talking with Kaz earlier this week that the children will be exiting the building and going down to right in front of City Hall? That's where they're going to be staying. So if they will be taking attendance to check off all the kids to make sure they're accounted for, and then you can come and pick them up, meet them down at the bottom of the hill in front of City Hall. So that's an important thing. We don't want to lose track of our precious kids. Okay, so with that, I feel like a lot of echo. There we go. Invite you now all to just take a moment to take a couple deep breaths. Come into this space. Feel whatever energy is present for you in this moment. Take another couple deep breaths and know that we are glad to have you here just as you are. Now receive this morning's introit.
Marcy Gallioni will be lighting the chalice for us today. Thank you. And this is The Echo of Inner Wisdom by the Soul Matters team. We light this chalice to remember the light within, to know that the hunger we feel inside is an echo of inner wisdom that wants something more for us, for others, for this weary yet wonderful world.
I now invite you all to rise in body or in spirit to sing our opening hymn, 1002, Comfort Me. The words will show up on the screen, and we're only doing 3 verses, and the last verse is a verse that's not in the hymnal. So I'd now like to invite our young people to come down for our time for all ages. Phyllis will need a chair and the table. It helps when I turn the microphone back on. So one thing that I just want to remind our people of all ages is that next Sunday is our Halloween Hullabaloo, and I'm hoping that people will feel comfortable and wear their costumes. So just a reminder to get your costumes ready for next week. So today I'm going to tell you a story called The 18th Camel. It's kind of a curious title. Let's see what that story is all about. So once there was a father who had 3 children. And when the father passed away, he wanted to leave an inheritance to them. He wanted to leave something so that they could take care of themselves. And he wanted to do this. And when the father passed away, they opened up the instructions that the father had left. And the father left to the young people, slide 1, 17 camels. And to the eldest member of his kids, he wanted to leave half of the camels. To the middle child, he wanted to leave a third of the camels. And the youngest kind of got the short end of the stick, but they only got 1/9 of the camels. The children thought about this, and they puzzled and puzzled and puzzled. How could they evenly distribute, based on the requirements of the father, to divide up these 17 camels? Because 17 doesn't go into 2 very well, it doesn't go very well into a 3, it doesn't go well into 9. So what could they do? And they started, fighting with each other. Any siblings ever fight with each other? Yeah, it kind of happens, right? It just kind of... I'm seeing some long looks there. Yeah, so they started fighting a little bit with each other, but finally somebody suggested, maybe the thing to do instead of fighting with each other is try to look at it in a different way. And so they decided that they would go to one of the town elders who had a reputation of being really intelligent, really smart, and very wise. And they went to this elder and they explained their predicament. How do we divide these camels up based on the instructions that they got from their father? And it took a long time, and this elder person said, well, come back in a day or two, and I will have a solution for you. So the kids went home, and they decided not to squabble too much that night because they were going to wait and see what this wise person came up with. And they went back in a couple days, and the wise person had an idea. They took one of their own camels, and let's go to the next. Yeah, there we go. Took one of their own camels and added it to the 17 that the young people had inherited. So now there's a total of 18 camels, which kind of changed the way that you look at the numbers, right? And so by using simple math, if you have 18, half of 18 is 9. So the eldest got 9 camels. The middle-aged child, 6, or a third of 18 is 6, so the middle child got 6 camels. And the youngest one, who kind of didn't get as much as everybody else, still got 2 camels, because 2 divided by 8, or 19, or 9 divided by 18 is 2. So when you added all these up, the 9, the 6, and the 2, that came out to 17 camels, which meant that there was one left over that could be given back to the elder for their help. Right? So is this kind of an interesting story? And the message that I'm trying to get out of this story is, do people think that was a pretty fair solution to this thing? It's a good way, because, you could always divide the camels up mathematically and come out with a fraction, but then you'd have to harm a camel, right? Or you'd have to figure out how to share a camel. And it doesn't work so well. But the point that I want to try and gather from this story is that sometimes we need to go to somebody else, or sometimes we need to be able to step back from a problem and look at it in a completely different way. And to be able to get through to finding a solution, one, it's important that we believe that there is an equitable solution, right? That really helps. If we believe it's impossible, we'll never get there, right? And it also means allowing ourselves to calm down a little bit, take a step back, and look at the bigger picture, right? So that's our story for today, and I'm not going to have a little bit of dialogue here just because we're a little short on time with the fire drill. But thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story. And now that we've kind of gotten you over the hump, it's time for you to go downstairs for your SE classes. So let us sing you down as we always love to do. And remember your costumes next week. Dear friends, please join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer. Great universal spirit, interconnected web of which we are part, we gather in this time and place to remind ourselves of the joys and sorrows that make up our existence. In sharing these joys and sorrows with each other, we grow closer to each other as we remember loved ones who have passed, as we think of people in our community who are dealing with health issues and struggling with addiction. And we also hold the joys of connection of people who are celebrating birthdays and anniversaries. May those experiences be joyful as they're shared with the larger community. Spirit, we gather because we know that by gathering in this way and telling our stories, that we grow closer to each other and we grow closer to becoming one. Blessed be. Amen. I'm going to suggest we skip the Spirit of Life so that we can keep things moving along because we're running a little short on time. So let's move into the offertory.
For today's offertory, half of the undesignated funds in today's plate will go to the Health Equity Alliance. Health Equity Alliance is a nonprofit, nonpartisan 501c3 organization that fosters community and a sense of purpose and well-being by providing safe spaces and the best of emerging practices in our HIV-positive care, homeless services, sexual health and wellness, and harm reduction programs.
I invite you all to rise in body or in spirit. It is with gratitude that we receive this morning's offertory to support this beloved community and the good work of the Health Equity Alliance here in Bangor. Thank you, and blessed be.
Reading is from Martin Luther King Jr., Southern Methodist University, on March 17th, 1966. Modern psychology has a word that is probably used more than any other word in psychology. It is the word maladjusted. It is the ringing cry of modern child psychology, and certainly we all want to avoid the maladjusted life. We all want to live in a well-adjusted life in order to avoid the neurotic and schizophrenic personalities. But I must honestly say, there are some things in our nation and the world to which I am proud to be maladjusted, and wish all people of goodwill would be maladjusted until the good society is realized. I never intend to adjust myself to segregation and discrimination. I never intend to become adjusted to a religious bigotry. I never intend to adjust myself to economic conditions that will take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few, leaving millions of people smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society. I never intend to adjust myself to the madness of militarism and the self-defeating effects of physical violence. We need maladjusted people where these problems are concerned, and through such maladjustment, we will be able to emerge from the bleak and desolate midnight of humans' inhumanity to humans into the bright and glittering daybreak of freedom and justice.
First of all, I want to thank the choir. You're sounding better and better every week. So I don't know what you're doing on Thursdays, but I like it. And then I want to welcome Zach Campbell to our midst here, and we'll have a little conversation about that those words that we just heard from the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So, Zach, what do you think of that reading from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. about being maladjusted? It's kind of an interesting
Absolutely.
take.
First of all, I do want to say thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Zach Campbell. I appreciate you guys offering your space to me, and I really thank you for this. It's a very powerful quote by Dr. King. Essentially, in order for the status quo to continue, the people need to grow accustomed to it, to adjust to it, to adapt to it. And things like poverty, food insecurity among children, unhoused, the crisis that we see, the opioid epidemic. These are all things that the political elites, the people who do benefit from this society, would like to see perpetuated. And in order to do that, they need the masses of people to grow accustomed to or to adapt to this. And I think what the second part and the most important part of Dr. King's quote is that to be maladapted is to act. And we have to become maladapted to these horrifying conditions that we can't accept, to protest against it.
Yeah, so how does that look specifically, like when we're talking around something around substance use disorder?
Absolutely. So looking at substance abuse, it's best to look at it as a response to environmental conditions, a response to hopelessness, a response to a lack of adequate services. And to become maladjusted and is to ultimately protest against that. What we do at Needle Point Sanctuary is offer outreach, we offer services, we meet people exactly where they're at, and we appreciate the church and everything you guys have done to provide a space for that, to provide a centralized location where we can do what at the very beginning was a controversial thing. Even passing out Narcan was very, very controversial when we first started getting going. But when we look at the overall trends of overdose rates, we're actually starting to see a decline for the first time in quite a long time. There's multiple factors for that, but it's a great thing to see.
Yeah, when we were talking, preparing for the service and whatnot, I think one of the observations that I found really profound is that we tend to have a stigma of people who are using substances, right, in a way to kind of cope. But it is a coping mechanism. And how many people here have taken an aspirin when you have pain, or taken a drink when you're having a bad day, or something like that? And so that is, in some ways a natural human response to stress, to anxiety, to all these things that we were talking about, right?
Absolutely.
And kind of turn that around, because a lot of people somehow see those behaviors or people who become addicted somehow as like a moral failing or something like that. And it's actually, in the grand scheme of things, a natural human response to suffering.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so, and there's a way that we, as you're saying, just become comfortable with it's somehow okay for people to be suffering in that way. And so how do we become maladjusted, but look for the solution that's not the immediate, what seems like the immediate solution of putting the individual on the spot, but looking at how is our society adapted to and accepting of people living on the street.
Absolutely. Something that Dr. King himself talked about is that we have a tendency in the society to condemn the product of the negative conditions that exist. So we don't necessarily condemn the conditions that lead to people being unhoused or people utilizing substances as a way to cope with the hopelessness or the, for me it was the work life in conjunction with going to school as a full-time student, balancing both of those to pay the rent, and it became untenable. And I had a lot of supports in my life. I've been able to cope with it a bit better than most folks have. But when you think of when you were at your worst in life, if you had some support, then you were very fortunate. A lot of the people that we work with, they simply don't really have that. So in regard to maladaptation, we have become adapted to food insecurity among children. We've become adapted to homelessness rates increasing 400% in the last 5 years. We've become adapted to militarism and sending a lot of money overseas, and then FEMA is underfunded, and we have a difficult time taking care of our own people in this country. So we should become maladapted to that. We should look at that and say we will not accept that, and ultimately organize against it. And you do that ultimately by looking at what you can do as an individual. So what I'd love to see, and we can talk about this too, is I'd love to see more community work between Needlepoint and the church, because we have outreach on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and these are things that we could easily organize hot food to take out there. And if you guys want I'm thinking clothing and socks and things that are useful for people who are unhoused. The great thing about Needlepoint Sanctuary is we have a very high, 100% donation to dollar that we receive. We give away everything that we take in, and we give it to the most impacted people. So that's us becoming maladapted to the system. That is us understanding, that we are very limited in scope. We can't, as individuals, take on the housing crisis, the opioid epidemic, and in many cases, some may look at our tactics and question them. But ultimately, we're doing what we can as a very small thing in the grand scheme of things. And that's what I encourage you, and I think that's what the Reverend is saying, is to ultimately look for ways in which we can protest against becoming adapted, and ultimately the conditioning that it requires for us to accept things that otherwise would offend us. When we lay in bed at night and we have a warm blanket, I know my partner Ash cries a lot at night because they can't stop thinking about the fact that people are sleeping on the cold ground or that they're wet. It's so offensive, and we have to grow adapted to that. We have to grow accustomed to that, because otherwise we wouldn't take it. If we did it for one night, we would understand that this is unacceptable, that people should not live like this, that as humans, that it's not even very radical to say that we should have a constitutional right to housing, or that we should, at a structural level, beyond the individual, at a societal level, try to address this in a meaningful way, and not just putting people in apartments, but providing services, quality services, a guaranteed jobs program, a case manager. Give them actual resources that can help them become what we would consider productive members of society, or just people who can give back to the community that has not, in many ways, not really given them anything, right? So you can kind of understand the apathy from their perspective, inadequate services and wanting to protest against that.
Yeah, and so I think you kind of covered a lot of material there, but the nice thing is with our partnership with Needlepoint is that there's a lot of things that we are kind of helping support in our community. This winter, we are planning on being available as an emergency shelter when the temperature goes below 0. You'll be doing some trainings this fall to help train volunteers. So if you're somebody who really wants to be able to do something, to be maladjusted to those kinds of situations and conditions, you can join one of the trainings. And I also just want to highlight some of the other work that Needlepoint does is harm reduction and needle exchange, or not exchange, but giving out clean needles
to
people and reducing harm. And I know when I first heard about this, I was kind of a little uncomfortable. This is not normal. Am I enabling? Am I doing things that are not so helpful or healthy? And as I've learned more and more about harm reduction and distributing clean needles and things like that, become aware of how that's kind of a maladjusted behavior and the norm, of our society. But there are so many incredible benefits to that, of reducing the spread of HIV/AIDS, hepatitis, and also we've heard recently in the news that opioid deaths have gone down, I think nationally, by about 10% in the last year or so. And I was surprised that here in Bangor, it's gone down 23%, largely to do some of the work that they've done.
Absolutely.
Thank you.